This morning we're going to go ahead and cover a few concepts that we have not yet gone over, that we partially went over in terms of the basics of Swift programming when coming from other programming languages. A lot of this is going to go ahead and wrap up some of the things that we were missing from the basic syntax, such as continuing to talk about functions, if statements, switch statements, and things like that. And then throughout the rest of this week, we are going to be talking about arrays, sets, and dictionaries, as well as tuples, and tuples, however you want to pronounce it. And then we also will be talking about MVC and the model view controller structure of iOS apps, and actually get into looking at iOS apps. So in this particular video, let's go ahead and we're going to talk a bit more about functions. So let's go ahead and let's set up our basic function. A function in Swift is defined using the func keyword, and then you name your function. So I'm going to call mine greet. And then you need to go ahead and define any parameters. Parameters are written with the parameter name followed by its type. And then you have to specify whether or not your function has a return. To give it a return, you will do dash greater than, create a little arrow-like icon there from those two characters, and then state the return type that your function has. So right here I've said that function greet has a parameter of person, which must be a string, and the function must return a string. Let's go ahead and define that now. So what's going on here is that we are defining a constant called greeting, and that constant is the string welcome with the person parameter, the string that is passed into the function, followed by an exclamation point. And then we return this variable, this constant, to whoever we've called greet from. So let's go ahead and let's put it all together now. I want to print to the screen whatever greet returns. So I would call the print function, and then within that I would call the greet function, and go ahead and give the value I want to pass to it. Now, one of the things we've already talked about is in Swift, when calling a function, you have to re-specify basically the parameter that you're passing in. So it doesn't automatically know or understand that Chris is being passed to person, even though this is the first parameter I'm passing, and person is the first parameter in the list of parameters, it's the only parameter. I still have to, in my call for the greet function, write person, and here is the value I'm passing into it. So let's go ahead and run this, and you can see it's going to print welcome Chris to the screen. So greet took in the string Chris, created the string welcome Chris, and stored it in the constant greeting, returned greeting up here to where I called greet, and then printed the returned string to the screen, which brings us right down here to welcome Chris. Now, there are two things I want to talk about here. First of all, like most programming languages, functions inside of Swift pass their parameters are passed to functions by value, okay? Not by reference, by value. And then if you go ahead and whatever the parameter is, this parameter exists within the scope of the greet function, and it is a let variable. It is a constant. To see what I mean there, let's say person equals Bob. And if we go ahead and run it, it'll tell you cannot assign to value person. It is a let constant variable. So the parameter variables of functions are constants. Now the way you would get around this, of course, is to go ahead and say, alright, well, within this function I'm going to define var name equals person. And now I can go ahead and I can reassign to name all I want, because name is not a constant. It takes in the original person value passed in and stores it as a variable instead of a constant, and then I can go ahead and rename it, do whatever I want with it. Yeah? So if I run this, it should still say welcome Chris. Name is stored in Bob now. We don't do anything with name after the fact. That's fine. However, what if I wanted to go ahead and pass a variable in by reference rather than value? In that case, let's go ahead and let's reset this function here. Now, in order to go ahead and pass by reference, you need to go ahead and do two things. First is you have to modify the function. The in-out keyword tells the compiler that I am passing in into greet the person variable, the value that I pass in, is being passed in by reference. Okay? And then in front of the variable, I put an ampersand in the call to the function. Now, you'll notice it's saying cannot pass immutable value as in-out argument. Literals are not mutable. I cannot go ahead and just pass in Chris as a string. It may seem a bit unnecessary, but what I have to do is var name equals Chris, and then I can say pass name, the variable, in. And then we'll go ahead and let's take person, make sure we stick it back here, and then we're going to assign person equals Bob. And we're going to go ahead and run this. Now it says welcome Chris, and we know that it's compiled, it's run. We were able to reassign the value of Bob to the person variable that came in here as the parameter, and it didn't throw any errors. Now let's go ahead and see how in-out and the ampersand character go ahead and impact the name variable, which exists up here outside of the scope of greet. And if I run this again, you'll see that calling greet with person parameter and giving it the value of Chris ended up printing welcome Chris. And then when I reassigned the value of person to Bob, it actually went back and by reference reassigned the value of the name variable that we originally passed in to Bob. Hence when I print greet person name, it gave me hello Chris, or welcome Chris, and then when I said print name after calling greet, it said that, well, name actually equals Bob, because that's what I did down here. I assigned it Bob. Now, that right there is kind of just a quick refresh on what we've already talked about regarding functions, as well as how you can see the issues with trying to modify the variable you've passed in. Again, person normally would be treated as a let constant unless passing by reference, where I would then use the ampersand in the call to the function and in-out as a modifier on the parameter.